All right, hello and good evening. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 6 affordable and 1 workforce housing single-family homes being made available at Richmond Sandpiper Place 1 and 2, that development project down in Nantucket. And the purpose of this session is to give a bit of background information on the homes. We'll also cover the application and the eligibility and lottery process, and what to expect after the lottery. So if you have any questions during the session, you're encouraged to go ahead and type them into the Zoom chat, or you can unmute yourself. When you came into the Zoom session, you were muted just to make sure that we minimize any unnecessary noise tonight. So just if you do ask a question in that way, we ask that you just go ahead and mute yourself again after you are all set. This is a live session. You should have received that notice when you came into the meeting as well. It's being recorded so it can be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel after the fact. So if anybody wants to view this, it wasn't able to attend the live session, they can do so. If you have any questions after tonight's session, you didn't think to ask, you can contact us at info@sebhousing.com. That's the easiest way to get in touch with us. You can also get in touch with us at the phone number on your screen if you have the slides up there, at the 617 number there with any questions on this opportunity. So if anyone has any questions or any issues viewing the screen or hearing me throughout the session, let me know. So just up front for some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we're an offsite affordable housing consulting group. So we are not the on-site sales team. We have been hired by the developer to market the affordable homes, conduct this information session, collect and review any applications, and determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program. And then also to run the lottery eventually. So we're not part of the sales team. We haven't seen the homes in person. And in the initial phases, we are your main point of contact rather than the developer or the sales team, I should say. But then further along in the process, you will have more direct contact with the owner as you're invited to move towards purchasing one of the homes. So there's 2 broad steps in the process. We're going to discuss them both throughout the session. The first is to apply for the affordable housing program. And as I said, during that portion of this process, you'll be in touch with SEB Housing. We can answer any questions you might have on the affordable housing program. We'll do a preliminary review of your application. If you're eligible, we'll enter you into the lottery and you'll be given a position on the waiting list. Excuse me. The second step in the process involves reserving and buying the home. So your opportunity to be able to do so will depend on your waiting list placement following the lottery, which we'll talk more about as well. There is an information packet that is posted on our website that has a lot of the information that I'm going to be drawing from during the session tonight. And on page 12 of that information packet, it lists an approximate timeline for each of the processes that I just detailed, those 2 steps. So if you haven't done so already, you want to visit our website, sebhousing.com. If you click on affordable housing opportunities, if you click on that page, it's going to direct you to, well, you're going to have a choice. You can either select I want to buy or I want to rent. This is obviously a home ownership opportunity. So if you select I want to buy, you're going to see Sandpiper Place 1 and 2. And if you select that, you will be taken to a page specific to this property. It'll have a downloadable version of the application. We will have a sample deed rider on that page over the next day or so, which is a document that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but it's going to be a document that's finalized closer to the closing on the home. And then also the information packet, like I mentioned, will be there. We're not going to have time to cover everything in that information packet. So even if you are attending this session, if you think you're interested in this opportunity, please take a look at that as well. There will be some, I will have covered all the main points, but there'll be other information in there that could be useful to you as well. So if you choose to apply to purchase one of the affordable homes at Sandpiper Place, you're going to need to complete that affordable unit application. and you can then submit it to SEB Housing in one of several ways. The first, or not really the first, but whichever of these you choose, whatever option works best for you is perfectly fine. You could email or scan it to us by sending it to info@sebhousing.com. You can fax it to us. The fax number is listed on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail. You can, if you're in the Needham area, that's where our office is located, and you could drop it in our 24-hour secure drop box. It's located to the left of our building, and our address is 257 Hillside Ave. Again, whichever of those works best for you, we just encourage you to get your application in early. It is fairly brief. It should only take you about 10 minutes to complete. You don't need to submit supporting income, asset, or tax documentation at this early stage, but you will need to submit, along with your application, a mortgage pre-approval. We're going to cover that a little bit more in depth as well, but just keep that in mind. You'll need to submit your lottery application and then the mortgage pre-approval. The only other thing that you will need to submit with your application is if you are a resident of Nantucket, or if you work full-time in Nantucket and you are claiming or reporting on your lottery application that you have local preference, and it's defined in the application, you will submit proof of that local preference. So that could be a copy of your current lease, pay stubs. We would want that along with your application as well. But other than that, you don't need to submit any supporting income documentation at this point. Applications are due by May 29th, so just about a little bit less than 3 weeks from today. And they need to be delivered or postmarked by May 29th in order to be considered. You do not need to be a resident of Nantucket to apply for the lottery. I mentioned that there is local preference. So there are some waiting lists for these homes that will have priority for local preference households. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes as well. All right, so the homes themselves. The timing of the completion of these units has been pushed back a little bit. So it's not currently set in stone when they will be available for occupancy, but right now it is anticipated that the first affordable home will be available for occupancy in the fall of this year. So sometime in the fall, we don't know the exact date yet. It has been pushed back a bit. We will keep, obviously, all the lottery households posted as the timeline is solidified. So there are 6 affordable homes, which are going to be sold to households with annual incomes at or below 80% of the area median income for the Nantucket area. There is also 1 workforce home. Kind of a strange name, but what that means is it's a higher income bracket. So the workforce home will be sold to a household with an income at or below 175% of the area median income for Nantucket. The homes currently being built within Sandpiper Place 1 and 2 are located in the larger development there that has been going on for a bit now. It's located off of Old South Road and Beachgrass Road in the town of Nantucket. All 7 of the homes are going to have 3 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms, along with 1 half bathroom. And there's going to be off-street parking for 2 vehicles at each of these properties. There's no garage, but there's the driveway for the vehicles there. There's also a back deck as well as a back porch at the rear of the home. And all the homes feature central heating and cooling. The kitchens have tile flooring, laminate countertops, painted wood cabinets, and they come with kitchen appliances. The bathrooms also feature that tile flooring, and then the remainder of the home is carpeted. A hookup for a washer and dryer will be installed in each of the homes. The washer and dryer appliances themselves will not be included. There is not a basement. There is a crawl space. That is where the homes are being built, on that crawl space. So I know that is a question sometimes that buyers have. So the Sandpiper Place 1 and 2, the development, the whole project there will be accessible by NRTA year-round bus service on the island. And the site is also located near shops, restaurants, services, dining, not too far from the ferry as well. You'll be able to get there relatively quickly. So the sales price for the affordable homes, let me flip back here so you can see that on your screen. The 6 affordable homes are going for $284,000, and then the workforce housing home, which remember is going to be sold to a household with an annual income up to 175% of area median income. So it's at a much higher price point. Is going to be sold for $781,000. Both of these prices are still significantly below what market rate homes are going to be selling for in the community. From what I saw online, some of the market rate homes, some of them are a little bit larger that are for sale right now, but they're going for over $2 million. So as many of you I'm sure are aware, Nantucket is very pricey. So since the homes are going to be sold at affordable prices, they're only going to be made available to households with incomes at or below either 80% or 175% of the AMI parameters that have been mentioned. So the area median incomes, those are amounts that are set by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so HUD. They release those each spring. They're actually coming out soon. And so that's where the area median incomes are coming from. All of the affordable and workforce homes are going to have what's called a deed rider filed along with the time of purchase, along with the deed at the time of purchase. So this ensures that the home is going to be remaining affordable in the future, even if the first buyer eventually decides to choose to sell the home. So just a quick overview of what a deed rider is going to include. A deed rider is going to limit the amount for which you can eventually resell the property. So this opportunity isn't for you if you're looking to buy, flip, and resell the home within a year or two. It doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to eventually sell the home for more than you paid for it, but it is going to need to be resold to another affordable buyer. So you may have some return on investment if it's not going to be the same appreciation that a home that's selling at market rate can sometimes see. There is a formula for resale price of affordable properties, and it's towards the end of the information packet. There's also the formula that's used is also based on area median income. The deed rider also states that the home must be your primary residence. So it can't be an investment property or rented out primarily as an Airbnb or anything like that. The deed rider also says that if you'd like to refinance or make capital improvements, such as a new roof or something like that in the future, DHCD, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development for the state, would need to approve. This is a brand new home. They're all brand new homes. So those types of improvements likely wouldn't be needed for many years, but just want to make sure that everyone's aware of what could be on that deed rider, because it will be attached to the deeds for these units. So I mentioned that a mortgage pre-approval is required to be submitted along with your lottery application. We suggest that after you review the information packet, you just either copy or rip out page 11 from the information packet, because it's listing for you all of the required mortgage pre-approval standards for this housing opportunity. And you can just bring that right to your lender or bank to show it to them. You want to be sure that you're getting a mortgage product that is meeting the necessary standards. You might also want to bring a copy of the deed rider with you, since that information can sometimes be problematic for lenders. Certain loans won't accept all the terms that are in a deed rider. So for example, the loan needs to be have a fixed interest rate throughout the term of the mortgage. It also can't be an FHA or VA loan, since those types of loans do not accept the deed restrictions for affordable units. Excuse me. You don't want to be in a situation where the lender grants pre-approval but then backs out at the time of purchase when they're made aware of these resale restrictions that are associated with affordable units. So along those same lines, it's been our experience that it's been difficult for applicants to successfully close with a Bank of America loan. So we recommend that you don't use Bank of America for your pre-approval or mortgage, as their mortgage products are likely not suited for affordable homes. With that being said, though, you can select any lender or bank that you would like. We just strongly recommend that you choose someone who has experience with affordable housing or the program itself. A link is included on page 10 of the information packet, which is going to direct you, it might be page 11 actually, which is going to direct you to Mass Housing Partnership's website. Their site is a great resource for you to find lenders who are familiar with affordable housing. So for the affordable homes, the mortgage pre-approval standards state that you must provide a down payment of at least 3% of the purchase price. Half of that 3%, so 1.5%, must come from your own funds. So your loan or mortgage for the affordable home can be up to 97% of the purchase price. I should turn this on here. For the workforce home, the requirement is a 5% down payment. So half of that 5% down payment must come from your own funds, which is 2.5%. So your mortgage amount, if you're interested in that workforce home, can be up to 95% of the purchase price because you'll be putting that 5% down. Before I move on to eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program, does anyone have any questions yet on what we've discussed about the general application process or the deed rider for these homes? Okay. So to move on to eligibility for the actual affordable housing program. Hold on, I have one question here.
And I do have a question after you answer that one.
Sure, yeah. So what was the down payment for the affordable? Right, so the 6 affordable homes, the down payment is 3%. 1.5% of that would need to come from your own funds. So your loan could be up to 97% of the purchase price. And then for the workforce homes, you're putting down 5%, 2.5%. Does it hurt to include supporting documentation with the lottery? It doesn't hurt, but if it becomes outdated between now and the time that you're being asked to supply that information, for example, if you're submitting pay stubs from, April right now, we might be looking for updated pay stubs by the time the lottery happens and we're reviewing your income. So I would just hold off on submitting anything other than the local preference information, if that applies to you, the mortgage pre-approval, and the application. And then, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a pre-approval, but it's only under me, but and I don't know if, so when I did it, when I got the pre-approval, I wasn't married, so I thought that was the way I had to do it. Now that we're married, does it have to have both names? I just don't want to get my credit pulled again.
Yeah.
If we get chosen per se, we can go to the bank, and get the mortgage under both names, but I don't want to do that if it's not necessary.
I will get back to you on that. Have you already applied?
No, I have the application ready.
Right.
Before I submit it, I wanted to be in this meeting to ask that.
Yeah, so if you could you can send me a direct message with your email address, or you can email info@sdbhousing.com, and I will get back to you on that. I don't know if you need to have been pre-approved with your husband. I don't think so, but I don't want to say for sure because I'm just not positive.
Okay. What's your name? Sorry.
Catherine.
Catherine. Okay.
If you send the email to info@sdbhousing.com, though, that's our kind of our general.
Yes, I talked to Joanne. Well, I just asked her for the link for the meeting, but okay.
Yep. And then a couple other questions here. When would the supporting documentation be asked for after the initial application? So Immediately following the lottery, which is going to be on May 29th. Yes, no, sorry, the lottery is in mid-June. We would be asking the top households on each waiting list to supply their income information. So that would be until at least late June. And there's a possibility that we would be waiting even longer because of the timeline on units not being ready quite yet. So it will be another month or two. What is the requirement for approval on the houses? So we're talking about, Selma, if you don't hear everything that you wanted to hear, you can ask some questions towards the end, but this also is going to be posted to our YouTube channel after tonight. In the beginning of the presentation, we're talking about more about the deed rider and restrictions, but we're going to be talking more about the eligibility requirements coming up for the affordable housing program. Do we have to provide this year's tax return or committed to be the last 3 years? It has to be the most recent 3 years. So if your tax returns are available right now from 2022, then you would need to provide those. If they're not available yet, you would just give us the last 3 that you have. All right, so I'm going to move on to, one second. To the eligibility requirements for the affordable housing program. So in the information packet, if you're looking at that later, or if you've looked at it already, there are 4 eligibility requirements, 4 general eligibility requirements in that information packet. They're listed on page 5. And the first is, and we're going to talk a lot more about this, but a household's income and assets need to be below the maximum allowable income and asset limits for the program. So those are on your screen right now. 80% is the affordable homes, 175% is the workforce home, and those are the income limits or maximums are by household size, as you can see. So if you are a single person and you're applying for a home to be eligible for the affordable home, you would need to make under $65,950 per year. And if you are a 4-person household that is going to apply for the 175% workforce home, you would need to be making under $238,175 per year. So just take a look at that chart there and make sure that your income amounts seem like they would fall under those. There's also an asset limit for this opportunity. For the affordable homes, the total asset amount for the household can't exceed $75,000. For the workforce home, the household asset limit can't exceed $450,000. The second eligibility criteria is that households have to be pre-approved for a mortgage, which we already know because you need to submit that with your application. The third eligibility requirement is for the affordable homes. Everyone in the household needs to qualify as what is referred to as a first-time home buyer. There are exceptions to this, and we're going to discuss them in just a few minutes, but even households who qualify for an exception would need to sell their current property. If you do own a home right now, you would need to sell it prior to closing on an affordable home at Sandpiper Place. So for the workforce unit, you do not need to be a first-time home buyer, but if you are a first-time home buyer and you're applying for that workforce home, you'll have priority on the waiting list. It's just not a requirement as it is for the affordable home. The fourth eligibility requirement doesn't come up often, but households can't have financial interest in the development or be a related party. So the homes are being offered by the developer Richmond Great Point Development LLC. So if you work for them or if you're related to them in some way, you may not be eligible for this lottery. So a couple questions came in before I move on to, so I'm about to get to this. Is this gross or net? We need to count gross income, even though clearly we don't take home, our full salary. Your paycheck is not always your full salary because of taxes and health insurance and things like that, but the program dictates that we do need to count gross income. Yep, so for self-employment, I'm gonna talk about that in a few minutes as well. Yeah, just hold that thought for a minute. All right, so just to circle back on the first eligibility criteria, everybody applying for an affordable home would need to be a first-time home buyer. So a first-time home buyer, all household members are considered first-time home buyers if they have not, within the last 3 years, owned a home. This includes through joint ownership. So if a household member was on the deed of a home along with another partner or person, they would still have been considered owners of that home within the last 3 years. There are 5 exceptions to the first-time home buyer rule, and it's in the information packet. But the 3 exceptions that come up the most often, I'm just going to mention here so you're aware of them. If someone is what's referred to as a displaced homemaker, that's someone who hasn't worked outside of the home for many years because they were home to care for the family and the household. They've owned a home with their partner or spouse, but they're no longer owning that home jointly because of a recent divorce or legal separation. That person's no longer on the deed. If you've owned a home within the last 3 years, under those circumstances, you could be still considered a first-time home buyer, and it would be an exception. The second exception is a single parent with at least joint custody of 1 or more children, or someone who's pregnant and is now being displaced due to a family breakup. The third exception that we see sometimes is an age-qualified household. So if this would apply to households who have a family member that is 55 or older, and that person is selling or has sold a home recently in order to purchase an affordable home. If you qualify for any of those exceptions to the first-time home buyer rule, you would still need to sell the home prior to buying a home at Sandpiper Place. So this might mean that your divorce would need to be finalized so that your name is no longer on the deed, for an example. So just keep that in mind, because for affordable homes, that is a requirement that everyone is a first-time home buyer, unless we qualify for those exceptions. All right, the income limit. Since these are affordable homes, they're only going to be made available to purchase at prices that are lower than the homes being sold at market rate. And they're only going to be made available to households whose income is below 80% of the area median income, or the workforce unit below 175% of area median income. The maximum income limits are set by household size. So if you're looking at the chart on your screen right now, if you have it up, you'll see that they're set by household size, because the first column there is how many persons are in your household. These figures are also in the information packet. They're on the application. And those are the amounts for Nantucket for this opportunity. Again, you're not required to submit verification of your income to apply for the lottery. You do just need to submit that mortgage pre-approval with your application. Once you've been approved for the lottery, you'll be sent an email that also has a link to the documentation requirements guide. And that guide details exactly what types of documentation, such as pay stubs, benefit statements, tax returns for the last 3 years, that sort of thing, that we're going to need from you. It all depends on your household's income and assets. You should review that guide carefully, just because you want to make sure if after the lottery you're invited to move forward in the process, you have that information ready, or at least know what you'll need to gather if you're at the top of those waiting lists. You'll have about 7 to 10 days to get that into us. And if you don't have everything all at once, we'll work with you to make sure that your income information is complete. So although we don't need income verification right now, I just want to give a basic overview on how your income will be calculated. So income for this program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So this includes bonuses and overtime. So those might be amounts that you're not sure of what they'll be throughout the year, but we do still need to count those. The only exceptions to the income are income from minors. So anybody under the age of 18 in the household who's earning a wage, we're not going to count their wage income. And then also for dependent full-time students who are working, we would only be counting the first $480 of their wages when determining your eligibility for the program. Again, we must count gross income, not net. So that's the amount you make before taxes. Although we don't take home our full pay, the program does dictate that that needs to be what is counted for eligibility purposes. How we calculate your income is not one size fits all. Everyone's income circumstances are unique. So while some applicants have that weekly steady salary that's consistent throughout the year, there are going to be other households who are self-employed or who are working seasonally. In those circumstances, we are likely going to need more. We're going to need to look further back into the past to be able to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months. Specifically for applicants who are self-employed, you're going to need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. There is a sample profit and loss statement that is available as a template for you that we provide at the end of the full application that will be sent to you once you're invited forward after the lottery to submit this documentation. But so your business expenses, if you're self-employed, will be taken into account. For households who are not self-employed, though, it is always going to be those gross, the gross income that we count. We're not able to consider other expenses if you're not self-employed, unfortunately. So in general, excuse my voice, any income that you have been making, we're going to have to assume that you will continue to make it going forward unless we have some sort of definitive documentation that you're not going to be making the same amount, or you're not going to make the same wages that you have been. For example, if you have a written letter or something like that from your employer that's going to be stating there's no bonuses, there's no overtime available this year, something to that effect, would be able to consider it. Some income sources that you can expect to need to write down on your application, not just wages, but if anyone in your household is receiving Social Security benefits, child support, alimony, retirement distributions, disability pay, unemployment, pensions, that sort of thing, you're going to want to write all that down. Any assets that generate income should be listed as well. To apply for the lottery, there are no minimum income requirements, but you will obviously need to qualify for that pre-approval and then eventually qualify for the mortgage. So you would need to meet the lender or the bank's requirements in order to receive that mortgage pre-approval. So there's no set minimum, but you will not be able to get a mortgage pre-approval if you don't have the finances to allow for a bank approval. Households applying for one of the 6 affordable homes cannot have more than $75,000 in assets. We already mentioned that, but just want to highlight that again. And then for the workforce home, households cannot have more than $450,000 total in assets. This includes any funds that you would use as a future down payment. So if you happen to have a family member or a friend who is planning to gift you part of your down payment, that's very gracious of them, and I'm sure that will be very helpful, but it does need to be considered an asset. So you need to disclose that information on your application as a asset. Assets would also include cash and savings or checking accounts, CDs, the net value of stocks or your 401k, retirement accounts, Even your Venmo and PayPal account, we're going to be totaling those to be able to confirm your asset amount. You might think it's a little strange that we're going to have to count money that you have tied up in a retirement account, especially since many of you might not be planning to access that money for many years. The program does require us to do so, since you could, in theory, access that amount or that money in your 401k or 403b to withdraw funds, although you would have a large penalty. So it is the post-penalty amount or the net cash value of that retirement account that would be counted towards your total assets. So you'd be eventually asked to get a letter from your financial institution that would list the post-penalty amount so they could estimate that for you. We do not need documentation to verify personal assets, such as jewelry or cars or anything like that. All right, so we've covered a lot of the eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program and the lottery. I see there's a few questions, so I'm going to go back to the chat here and try to go from the beginning. Do people with more we're going to get to this in a minute too, but do people with more dependents get priority over people with less dependents? In general, yes. When you fill out your lottery application, you're going to select whether or not your family qualifies as a type 1, type 2, or type 3 household. A type 3 household is a larger household in general that would have more household members. So since these are 3-bedroom homes, persons with larger household sizes are going to have priority for them. The program isn't designed to have, one person occupying a 3-bedroom home. They're welcome to apply for a 3-bedroom home. They're just not going to have priority for it. So if there are interested households that have that higher priority or the larger household type, they're going to be higher up on the waiting list. And that's in the information packet too, but I'll talk more about that too. Are company vehicles considered an asset that generates income? No. Is a savings account for a child that is 2, but saving for his future considered an asset? Yes. So minors that have savings accounts, we would just need to see the statements for that, and yeah, it would be totaled up with the assets of the household in total. All right, so any other questions, keep them coming. I'm just going to move on to the lottery eligibility process and just the lottery process itself as well. So as mentioned, if you're interested, you should apply as soon as possible, get the process started. We're going to review your application, contact you if there's any information missing or if there's incorrect, and you'll have a chance to go ahead and resubmit as necessary. If you are found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a lottery application number. It'll be in the form of a series of numbers. This will just be an email that's sent to you. And that's the number, that A.001, for example, that number is going to be the number that's drawn in the lottery. It's just meant to be an anonymous identifier. It's not, it's so your name isn't called during the lottery. It's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds to the order in which we received your application. So if you were the very first person to submit a completed application for Sandpiper Place, your number is going to be A.001. So I just mentioned this too, but on your application, you will have indicated if your household type is either type 1, 2, or 3. Type 1 and type 2 households can apply for these 3-bedroom homes, but type 3 households are going to have priority. So this means that all type 3 households will be ahead of type 1 and type 2 households on the waiting list that will be established after the lottery draw. There are additional details about household composition and what certain household types consist of on pages 9 and 10 of the information packet. But just for a quick reference, all households with 4, 5, or 6 members are considered type 3 households and would have priority, as well as select 2 and 3-person households. There's more information about that in the packet. So again, the lottery application deadline is May 29th. just under 3 weeks from today. The lottery itself is going to be held virtually at 6 p.m. on June 12th in the same format as this. So it would be via Zoom. And shortly after the lottery, top households will be invited by SEB Housing to move forward, reserve the unit, get their mortgage, and potentially purchase the home. Like I said, there might be a little bit of a delay after the lottery, given the fact that these homes have been delayed. So if the homes aren't ready to be occupied until the fall, say October 1st, we don't want to certify you for the program too early, because then you might not need to do it again. So we'll need to work out whether or not, with the developer over the next few weeks, whether or not we'll be asking households to move forward and submit their information right away, or if we should put the brakes on it for a few weeks. So we'll get in touch with you. You will know at the lottery, or you'll know at the lottery if you're going to be asked to move forward to submit that documentation if you are one of the top households, or if there will be a delay for anyone who is selected. So like I said, during the lottery itself, same format as this. It'll be a Zoom session. I'll have a box next to me. All of the lottery application numbers will be in the box. I'll draw each of them. I'll hold it up to the screen so you're able to see who was called. And then every lottery application number will be drawn. Sometimes when we think of lotteries, we think that there's just going to be one winner, or in this case, 7 winners, because there's 7 homes. But that's not going to be the case here. We draw everyone's number, and we then sort the results by priority. The lottery is basically just held so we can establish the waiting list for the homes, and it's going to create an order of priority for the next steps in the process. So if you're watching on the night of the lottery, it's not going to be possible for you to know or to be sure of where your placement is on the waiting list. And that's because type 1, type 2, type 3 households are all going to be mixed in together. Local preference households are going to be mixed in there. But we're going to sort the results very soon after. Usually we sort them that night. So an email goes to you either later on that night or by the next morning, and you'll see where you fall on the waiting list. So an example too of why you wouldn't know your exact placement during the lottery is that if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery, they're still going to be behind all the type 2 and type 3 households on the waiting list for these 3-bedroom homes. There also could be households who were entered into the lottery but could be found ineligible by SEB Housing once we are looking at their finances. Or there are sometimes just households who decide ultimately not to purchase the unit. So if your number is drawn and you're further down the waiting list that you would like to be, maybe you're 5th, 6th on the waiting list, you shouldn't lose any hope of being able to move forward in the process, because you may still have the opportunity to move forward to purchase one of the homes. So following the lottery, like I said, we do our best to establish the waiting list right away. We don't want to keep people hanging. You'll get an email from us. If you don't have an email, we will be sending it to you no later than the next morning. When you're reviewing that email from us, you can find your lottery application number on the waiting list that have been sorted, and you'll have a better idea of whether or not you'll be able to move forward in the process right away, that next step of submitting your income information. If you are one of those top households on the waiting list, we're going to send you that invite to move forward in the process, to send in your income, asset, tax documentation that's required to confirm your eligibility for the program, the affordable housing program. And then hopefully by that point, you've been able to gather the documentation that was spelled out in the documentation requirements guide. You know what we're going to need, like pay stubs and tax returns and that sort of thing. And then you'll have about a week to get that information to us. And again, we work with you. If you don't have everything right off the bat, we work with you to give extensions and that sort of thing. Once we have your application package, we're going to review it and respond to you within a few days. Most applicants do not submit that 100% complete application right off the bat. There's two reasons for it. There's a lot of information that's required. And then also sometimes if you submit everything that we need, sometimes bank statements or pay stubs have other things that we need to clarify with you, deposits, whatever it might be. This is why we just encourage you to be prepared and review that documentation requirements guide. That'll be sent to you with your lottery application number. Question here, if I'm a household type 3 and I get picked 5th, does that mean I will get the house? No. So there are multiple waiting lists for this opportunity. There are some waiting lists who have that are going to have local preference. So I can't tell you exactly where you'd fall based on that, the circumstance that you just wrote out there. But if you're pulled on a non-local waiting list, that means that the local households don't have priority on that waiting list. It just depends. So it's hard to say. So if you have local preference, I see your follow-up there. If you have local preference, you're going to be higher on the waiting list. You're also a type 3 household, so you're going to have the highest priority on the waiting list. If there's 10 other people on the waiting list, we don't know where you'll fall after we sort the results. But if you're the first person on the waiting list and there's only one house for that waiting list, you're going to be the first person to be called forward. Yeah, nobody's going to be able to be screened ahead of you. So you'll just have a better understanding of where you fall once you see the waiting list. Because we highlight like who's going to be moving forward, that sort of thing. So it's a little more clear following the lottery. All right, so after the lottery, if you're ultimately found eligible by SEB Housing, once we've reviewed your income and asset documentation, our next step in the process is to send your file to the state, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development. They're considered the monitoring agent for the program. So they're going to do a file review and give us the green light that you're eligible to move forward. And once DHCD has approved your application, the process becomes very similar to the steps you would be taking if you were purchasing a market rate home. I should mention that at this point in the process, you're encouraged to hire an attorney to assist you in navigating through the process. We encourage that. It's perfectly likely. It's likely the smart thing to do. It's a huge decision to be purchasing a home. We want to make sure that everyone understands the process and is well represented. So once DHCD has approved your application, we're going to put you in touch with the owner or the developer of the home to schedule a time to tour the home and complete a reservation agreement. So you'll be reserving a specific home at that point. And at that time, a $500 refundable deposit is required. After you reserve a home, you'll have about 10 business days to sign a purchase and sale agreement. And then you're placing the required deposit of 1.5% of the purchase price, or if it's the workforce unit, 2.5% of the purchase price, minus that $500 that you've already paid in your reserving the unit. The remaining 1.5 or 2.5 comes at closing. Your purchase and sale agreement might include certain agreed upon contingencies and a closing date. And this is one of the final steps in the home buying process. So the finish line at this point is very near. Once the purchase and sale is signed, you're going to need to then go back to your bank or the lender who issued your mortgage pre-approval and obtain a mortgage commitment. Their process, the bank's process, is going to vary a little bit depending on the lender, but generally they're going to need to review all of your documents up until this point. That would be your purchase and sale agreement, the deed rider, that sort of thing. They'll do an appraisal on the home to get you to that point where you get the mortgage commitment. SEB's final review. So households need to remain eligible for the affordable housing program up until closing. So about 3 to 4 weeks before your closing date, Staff at SEB Housing are going to conduct a final review of your application. That might mean submitting updated pay stubs, bank statements, your mortgage commitment letter that you have now in hand from the bank. And we will forward that final package again over to DHCD for their final review. If you've maintained eligibility for the affordable housing program, you're going to move towards closing. Once you've closed on the home, you can move in. There's not going to be any future income or asset eligibility reviews. If you qualify for the affordable housing program at the time of your closing, you own it. You qualify for it. At that point, no one's going to check in on you in 5 years to make sure that you still make a certain amount of money. It's not the way the program works, thankfully. I see one other question here. So I mean, dependent as it's written on the information packet, just to say the question here for anybody who doesn't have it on the screen. So who qualifies as a dependent? Is that someone who is expected to join the household, for example, a baby, a brother or mother, or any relative? So yeah, the wording dependent is used in the information packet for when determining your household type and also on the application, but it's really other household members. Yeah. So all of the above. It applies to anyone who is not the head of household. So if you're applying with 2 children and a brother, but he's not going to be one of the head of households, then you have 3 dependents. So it's a 4-person household. So yeah. So that about covers everything that I wanted to get through on the from the information packet for this opportunity. Once again, you can find the lottery application, the information packet, and we will have the sample deed riders for both the affordable unit and the workforce unit available on our website by tomorrow. Those are just there for reference. They're not going to be the deed riders that you're actually signing when closing comes. Any other questions? Does that person need to be dependent on the prior tax year? No. No. To be a member of your household, we just need to know that they're currently living with you and will be living with you at the home. Yeah, whoever's going to occupy the unit. What if you move at some point? Do you have to sell the home since it can't be rented out? So I don't know the details in terms of the deed rider and just the program of how long you can be away from the unit for it to still be your home. I do know that in general, DHCD does not want it to be rented out as a vacation home, for example, or a VRBO or anything like that. But if there are extenuating circumstances, you know, maybe someone is going to be in rehab for a while, something like that, you can, with this deed rider, it will make it clear that you would need to contact the state to inform them of what you would want to do to rent it out if a circumstance came up where you needed to. If you're married but your husband will not be living with you, would you need to list him as a dependent or leave him off the application? If you are still legally married, he would need to be listed with you, or you would need to provide verification that you were no longer married. So yeah, you would put him on there. And dependent, again, the dependent language is a little misleading on the application and everything. If he's considered another co-head of household or a dependent, I mean, when you're looking at those definitions, it's a little strange, but as you're selecting what household type you are, one of them should make sense for your family. Any other questions before I let you go? Again, just to encourage everyone to go to our website to see the application, a little bit more information about the property, the deed rider, the information packet, all that's there. Looks like a great opportunity. I hope this was helpful to everyone. I appreciate your attendance and questions. Any questions after tonight too, I'm just gonna flip back here, info@sebhousing.com is the best way to get in touch with us. And yeah, we'll get back to you right away with answers. 5% of the sales price is $40,000. When is that due? So 5% is the down payment for the workforce unit only. So if you're interested in the affordable units, it's the 3% of sales price, and 1.5% of that needs to come from your funds, whereas the other can be the other half of that 3% can be from other funds or from a mortgage. It's split up that at purchase and sale, which is towards the end of the process. That's when the first half is due, the other half is due at closing. Do I need to include divorce, custody agreement with lottery application, just those stuff? No, you don't need to supply anything to prove, quote unquote, your household type. But when you're listing out your household members, will be checking just to make sure that your household type kind of matches up with the members that you have listed on your application. If you happen to get a house as a tier 1 or tier 2 application, are you allowed later to rent a room to a year-round tenant? I do not believe, I mean, you shouldn't, I do not believe that you should be renting a bedroom, for example, for these homes. And the tiers you're talking about on the waiting list, the different priorities. But no, that would be renting out the unit or the part of the unit, which would not be allowable for these homes in general, the affordable program. All right, any other questions before I let you go? Yes, the question is, do all adult household members have to have their income assessed? Yes. Everyone in the household, we will be, even minors, for example, if you have a child who is receiving Social Security benefits, that is not wage income, so it would be counted towards the total amount. But anyone under the age of 18, wage income does not count. Thank you again for all your questions. I appreciate your time as well. Any other questions? info@sebhousing.com. We can help you out tomorrow or anywhere else. Good luck to all of you as well. Thanks again. Have a good night.